there, Kids Church! We are still reading together the book, Who Was David? Today we're going to be reading through chapter 3, On the Run. It starts on page 25 to 5. Meet me there. David received word that Saul was after him, so he went back to find his friend Jonathan. Do you remember Jonathan from chapter 1? That's King Saul's oldest son. Once the two friends were reunited, David asked why Jonathan's father was trying to take his life. Jonathan told David not to worry. He said that his father always told him his plans and that he hadn't heard about the horrible things David was saying. David told Jonathan that Saul knew he and Jonathan were friends. Saul, in David's opinion, didn't want to see his son grieved, saddened by David's passing. But David believed that Saul would still find him and take his life. Jonathan replied, "Whatever you want me to do, I'll do it for you." That's a good friend. Jonathan vowed or promised never to turn David over to his father. Turn the page to 26 to 6. The two friends went out into the fields and came up with an idea. Jonathan, the king's son, told David to hide behind a big stone. He said he would shoot 3 arrows at it, like he was taking target practice. Then, when he sent a servant to go get the arrows, Jonathan would send David a code so he would know whether it was safe to stay or if he should run away. The next day, when Saul sat with his family for a feast, he noticed that David was absent or not there. Let's go up to the top left of 26 and read the clues box. David came up with a plan to test the king's heart. He told Jonathan that he was going to hide out in the field. He said that if Saul acted like he missed David, then Jonathan should say that David had gone back to Bethlehem to join his family in an annual sacrifice. David told his friend that if Saul was okay with that, then David knew he was safe. However, David knew that if Saul lost his temper over the story, then he would face extreme danger. Okay, we're back now on to page 27, 2-7. The big illustration with the arrow and the tree, Jonathan and David. Do you see that? 27. Saul thought nothing of it, but when David was missing from the gathering for the second day's meal, the king asked his son Jonathan for an explanation. Jonathan protected David by telling Saul a story about David's family wanting him there for a sacrifice, and that one of David's brothers had ordered him to be there in Bethlehem for it. 1 Samuel 20:29. Page 28 to 8. Saul became infuriated, which means super angry, with Jonathan's response because David got away. Saul was angry because he knew that Jonathan had helped David escape. Saul threatened his own son by saying, "As long as the son of Jesse lives on this earth, neither you nor your kingdom will be established." 1 Samuel 20:31. Then Saul ordered his son to have someone find David and bring him to the royal palace. Jonathan tried sticking up for his friend by asking Saul, his dad, what David had done wrong. The next morning, Jonathan went out to meet David in the fields. A small boy was with him to collect the arrows. Jonathan yelled out, "Isn't the arrow beyond you?" Hurry, go quickly, don't stop. 1 Samuel 20:37 through 38. Before we switch over to 29, go back to page 28 and let's read the gray clues box. Jonathan knew that his father intended to kill David. This made Jonathan very sad. He couldn't eat and was very angry and ashamed or sad at the way Saul wanted to mistreat David. We're on the top of page 29, 2-9. This, of course, was the friend's code, and the boy had no idea that David was close by and can hear Jonathan's secret message. When the boy returned the arrows, Jonathan told him to take them back to the village. After the boy left, David came out from his hiding place behind the stone and bowed before Jonathan. Both men cried together because of the sad news that Saul had every intention of killing David. Finally, Jonathan told David to head out in peace and reminded him that they would be friends forever. We are at the top of page 30. Eventually, David left and Jonathan headed back to town. The Bible says that David went to a town called Nob, where he met the priest or pastor, Ahimelech. The priest asked David why he was traveling alone. David replied by saying that the king had sent him on a secret mission and that his men were sent a different direction. David then asked the man for food. While this was going on, the chief shepherd of Saul was there. David asked the priest if he had a weapon he could borrow. Ahimelech said the sword of Goliath, you remember the giant Goliath that David defeated, was there. David agreed that it was a special sword, so he took it and fled from Saul's servant. Top of page 31, 3-1. David went to the king of Gath, Achish. The Bible says that David was afraid of the king and pretended to be insane or crazy. David acted like a madman, making marks on the doors of the gate and letting saliva or spit run down his beard. 1 Samuel 21:13. Achish was enraged or angry. He couldn't believe his servants would bring such a lunatic into his presence. David took off from Gath and ran to the cave of Adullam. His family received word where David was, and they went to him there. Soon, nearly 400 men, people who were unhappy, in debt, or stressed out, gathered with, top of page 32, 3-2, David, and he became their commander. 1 Samuel 22:2. David continued his escape journey and went to a place called Mizpah in the land of Moab. He found the king in Moab and asked if his parents could stay with him until he learned what God was going to do. A prophet, remember a messenger of God, named Gad, came to David and warned him to leave. Do not stay. Go into the land of Judah. 1 Samuel 22:5. Again, David ran away and headed into the forest of Hereth. Page 33, 3-3. Saul received news that his men had discovered David's whereabouts. He sat holding a spear and addressed all his officials who were nearby. Saul started asking them questions about David's character and intentions. Will the son of Jesse give all of you fields and vineyards? Will he make all of you commanders of thousands? 1 Samuel 22:7. One of the king's servants, Doeg the Edomite, spoke up and told Saul about how David went to the man named Ahimelech at Nob, and how the man provided for David and even gave him Goliath's sword. This information made Saul angry. The king sent for Ahimelech and questioned him as to why he would help David. Let's go up to the top of page 33 to read the gray clues box. Saul was mad because he wanted to know why his men weren't helping him catch David. Saul thought maybe they had made bargains with the fugitive or runaway. Page 34:34. The man said that he knew that David was the most loyal servant in all of Saul's army. Saul ignored the truth and became enraged or super angry. He threatened to take the man's life and ordered his guards to take the lives of all the priests or pastors because Saul thought they too had helped David. Saul was in for a surprise, for his guards refused to obey him. Because they were God's priests or pastors, the guards did not want to harm them. Saul wouldn't be outdone. He turned to Doeg and again ordered him to strike down the priests. Unlike the guards, Doeg obeyed the command. As Doeg carried out the evil order, one man named Abiathar escaped and found David. He told David of the horrible attack on the priests. David had remorse or sadness because he had met Doeg before and had a feeling that he would tell Saul about David and how Ahimelech had helped him. And he felt like he was responsible for the horrible murders. David invited Abiathar to stay with him since he had a common enemy in Saul. Before we close out this chapter, go back to page 34 at the top left. I forgot to read the gray clues box. It says clues. Edom was a land that borrowed Israel and is now southwest Jordan. It was a popular place because of its location on the trade route between Arabia and the Mediterranean Sea. Well, pat yourself on the back. We've made it through chapter 3 on the run. Join me next time for chapter 4, still running. Poor David.